Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Depths, back with another Kamihime project video. Before I get into the video, I gotta mention a few things. One, I still do play Kamihime project, even though I am playing Magic Kami and especially Genshin Impact a lot more. It's the fact that I kind of slowed down on this game, but I still haven't quit yet, so there's that. Also, I will be doing another Genshin Impact video. I've done some recent ones, only they haven't gotten too many views, so I don't know if anybody's interested or not. But I will do another Genshin Impact video pretty much discussing what I think about the game so far, because we've had quite a good deal of content on that, and I want to give my take on that. But anyways, getting back into Kamihime Project, this is going to be another Labyrinth event, and this one's pretty important for people that do not have enough Exceed on their dark grids, because there is a dark Exceed weapon worth getting here. But I will go over that later down the line. First off, those of you that don't know, Labyrinth events, you basically go through multiple floors, or they call them laps, basically, and you go fighting enemies on each one, then move on to the next. Every so often you'll be able to basically save your progress. It's like every 10 floors. So you'll be able to go back to a previous floor if you want to, or even just pick it up at another point if you decide to just quit and not do it in one run. Now, there's only two difficulties, standard and ultimate. However, don't be fooled. Ultimate, if you want to run through the entire gauntlet, you have to be pretty strong, because you're taking out a lot of enemies in a row. And the same could be said for standard if you want to be honest, but you can complete every single floor on ultimate if you are capable of soloing ultimate catastrophe raids, because enemies will have HP around that mark. Now, if you're not capable of that, don't worry, just go as far as you can. You can still get 100% of the list no matter how strong you are. You'll just simply have to repeat the easiest floors if need be. But the further you go, the better the drop rate, and on top of that, the higher the difficulty, the better the drop rate. So keep that in mind. Typically, people who can do ultimate in one go end up completing the entire list in one attempt, usually. Now, I don't know if for sure if the floor that has a skill measurement Coon, because he's in here, I don't know if that's going to give you the rest of your treasures that you're missing, but I tend to get 100% by the time I go in front of that guy, so that's just my personal experience on that one. But anyways, there's a lot to take in with this one. I also have to point out, your HP does carry between fights, and items will carry between fights as well. However, what does not carry between fights is cooldowns, and the big thing, status effects, meaning all your buffs and debuffs do not carry over. So if you buff yourself on one fight, it will not last until the next fight. However, if you get hit with something like a debuff or poison or something like that, it will not carry over between fights either. So use that to your advantage. And the fact that skill cooldowns get reset, and also add Doan cooldowns as well, that's something else you can use to your advantage, because you can get a friend that Doan, be able to call them out every single fight. Or you can get like something like, say, Solomon, and just ability nuke everybody out the gate, which is usually best done with Medea. I would have to say she's probably the best soul to have for this event, Medea. But if you don't have her, Solomon can work. Use whoever you feel is best, if not either one of those two. But and also a big thing is snatch and drop rates do not work. They do not work. So don't worry about having those accessories. Don't worry about having souls like, say, Caspar, unless you're doing AoE damage or something like that. But anyways, snatch, drop rate, they do not work. So don't worry about that. Now, I also had to mention that you do spend AP per lap, aka per floor. So make sure to have some refills, because unless you are seriously high rank, it is impossible to do all this in one go without refilling. So be sure to have some half elixirs or even full elixirs, because we've had events for full elixirs too. But Make sure to have those to refill your AP. It will take 100 AP to fully go through Standard. It will take 200 AP to fully go through Ultimate. That's if you're intending on clearing every single floor on one of those two difficulties. Preferably, go for Ultimate, because better drop rates in Standard, and they just increase further. Now, when it comes to the enemies, there's only two I have to point out that do not have their HP changed. The Carbuncles, which can show up every floor that ends in 5 or 0, which is the mid-boss if it ends in 5, and the boss floors if it ends in 0. Now, those floors have a chance of giving a Carbuncle instead of one of those boss enemies only 5,000 HP no matter what difficulty you fight them at. And they are easy kills. They also drop more treasures than any other enemy, basically. So, that said, if you find one, that's lucky. If you don't find one, oh well. Now, in the case of Skill Measurement Coon, this is not like the ones from guild competition. These guys are not really meant to be defeated. You can do it, but that's through some exploits where it involves pretty much getting your fortitude back up every single turn. But you don't have to. If you are trying to take them on, keep in mind that every single attack they do will do at least 7 digits. If you have no attack downs or skill cuts or anything. If you have no protections, they will deal 7-digit damage. You will never get that much HP. Now, I don't know if this one's going to do AoE damage, but there have been some that have done it before. There's been some that have done single target damage. Either way, you're not meant to kill these guys. Don't worry about it if you can't. If you are trying to kill them, you have 1 billion HP to go through, and they will deal insane damage per hit. The only way to actually survive against it is through fortitude every turn, or indomitable, or whatever it is it's called, where you come back after dying. And it has to be cast every single turn. There's no other way around it. Now, unfortunately, there's a Kamihime in the game called Justicia. I think she was in the Thunder element, and she was SSR, but she was capable of pretty much taking a hit, getting her burst gauge filled all the way back up, using her burst and reapplying that to herself. She's the reason why there's going to be a burst gauge nerf, because the devs, not the Nutaku devs, the actual game devs, they didn't want you to cheese this. So that ended up leading to that burst gauge nerf. So when that happens, the most burst gauge you can get by getting whacked is pretty much 60. So there might still be ways around it after that nerf hits. I don't know when it hits. I just know that one of these labyrinths is the reason why they exist. So if it's in the game, don't expect Justicia to actually win it for you. Now, also be warned that there is something in the game called turn lag, where my guess is because it stores memory, it will end up eventually piling up a lot of built up memory, and suddenly it gets slower and slower and slower to do each action. And it tends to increase around every 30 turns or so. Because this guy has like 1 billion HP, and you're most likely going to have 1, maybe 2 Kamihime that can last the entire fight, that means that you will take a very, very long time to kill this guy, because at most you're probably doing like, what, maybe 4, maybe 8 million damage in a burst, and you still got billions to go through. But generally you'll have like maybe 1 character, so at best you'll probably have like 2 million, because Justicia isn't a 4 million burst Kamihime, I remember. Now, that said, it's going to be a very, very long fight. It's going to take an hour plus to do that, but there is no time limit. So keep that in mind. Also, if you do start any labyrinth, you have to leave out of it in order to be able to do anything else. That doesn't mean to just temporarily save your progress. That means to literally finish your run. So keep that in mind. So if you're trying to do any raids or anything, do that ahead of time, then work on the labyrinth. Now, getting into the actual enemies of the labyrinth, they're the same regardless of difficulty. Even the measurement coons and the carbuncles. However, here's what you need to realize. It is based on your lap number. So, that said, it's going to get harder the more laps you go through. Excuse me for that. So, that said, it will start off with a little bit of HP, but then multiply by a lap number. Even standard difficulty will start getting enemies with a lot of HP. For instance, let's take the weakest ones, which have 1,000 HP at the start, and then 500 times their lap. Now, first floor, they only have like 1,500 HP. Anybody can basically take them out pretty quickly. However, that 500 will get multiplied by 100. Well, by 99 because you can't face them on the 100th floor. But it'll be multiplied by 99. So you have 500 times 99 and then add 1,000 to that. That's what I'm talking about. Normal enemies follow the same HP scaling. Mid bosses follow the same HP scaling, which is like the Chaos Demogorgon and whatever these two are. I think they're like mid bosses or probably weaker raid bosses from previous events. There are enemies from previous events here. And then the bosses, Sayahaga, Python, and pretty much the Dark accessory quest boss. And they all have their different attack patterns too. Quite frankly, I will have all this right here. People could just pause and just see what they all do, because their attacks are the same regardless of difficulty. It's just the fact that they will have more HP on a higher difficulty. So just pause that and look at it if you're curious. There's also the HP scalings right there as well. And I'm going to do the same for down here because of the fact that there's higher HP scalings. Because remember how I said they started with 1,000 and then got 500 per floor on standard? Well, on ultimate, the normal mooks, they have 25,000, then 10,000 per floor. And there's 200 floors this time, not 100. So that's how HP scaling is pretty much going on this one. But I don't need to show what skill measurement Coon does again because he doesn't change regardless of difficulty. And you only fight skill measurement Coon after you've run through the parts of the labyrinth you're meant to go through. So that's for 201 on ultimate, and that's for 101 on standard. Once they start appearing, they will never stop. Which means if you happen to kill it, you'll just see it the next floor. That's proof that you're not meant to be doing that. But anyways, they do recommend some souls right here, but quite frankly, I would say this out the gate: bring a healer. Bring somebody that can do some good, strong damage against both bosses and normal enemies. So that's why I suggested Solomon and especially Medea. So that will greatly help you out for the boss fights as well. And keep in mind, you can have items carry over. So a Kamihime that can make items, have them do that every single turn. You'll start racking up a ton of potions. Like, have them do that every single floor. Or every single battle, basically. Because there can be multiple battles per floor. So, anyways, going into what you can get. 3 dark weapons. One of them is very special to go after. Again, I will go over that in a second. You can get a lot of magic jewels. I think it's 3,000. And then these gacha tickets are pretty interesting because of the fact that there's a 10 draw gacha ticket in here. So there's that. Also, anybody that cannot complete guild competitions, guild order. Anybody that cannot complete guild order, you can get Orichild cons. They call them Orichild comes, which is actually the real name for it, but translator is just kind of screwed up on that one. Anyways, you can get Dragonic Eye shards, you can get these books for upgrading your characters and whatnot. Fangs are very important. Get those because fangs are kind of hard to come by right now. You can get runes, you can get skill enhancement materials, you can get character enhancement orbs, you can get lots and lots of gems. Believe me when I say this, you will rack up tons of gems by just going through Ultimate once. You can get a lot of stuff to upgrade your characters and whatnot. You can get special soul points here too. Very important because it's one of the few events that hand them out. you can get a lot of stuff here. So always suggest going through the entire list, because quite frankly, if you were strong enough, this will only take you an hour or two to go through the entire event. I'm not kidding. But anyways, it all depends on how strong you are, but still go through the entire thing. Remember, the more you can clear it once, the better the drop rates you'll start getting. So you'll be capable of getting quite a lot of items in one go if you can do as much as possible in one go, especially on Ultimate. Now, for the weapons themselves, this Dark Hammer, get this hammer. It's even more interesting considering what its main effect is, because sometimes people don't even use soul weapons for the main effect, because that's also an interesting strategy. But this weapon, when used on your soul and they make a burst, they will gain some burst gauge back. That is very powerful. Anybody that has a Yuri or Shingen weapon already knows how powerful that is. Now, the big reason why you want this, it is a final break weapon that can get medium exceed and also small strength. That means you will get an exceed weapon that also boosts assault and defender. Get this weapon. Get this weapon. In fact, you might possibly want it over the Union event weapon, depending on if you want more HP for your team. But either way, you probably should get this weapon, because it is one of the few exceed weapons you can get that is not part of a Union event. And I mean the Union events that have the demons, not the ones we get now that have the seraphs. The demon Union events is the ones that gave the exceed weapons, and we're not getting them for a long time. Get this weapon. I cannot stress it enough. Get this weapon. It also has a very good amount of attack power and also a decent amount of HP. So, there's that. Now, if you're still needing a bit of a gun replacement, you might be able to use this one. But, quite frankly, I'd say if you're really focused on dark guns, just go get aura guns. But if you are interested in using it, it can put interception to your soul if they happen to do it, but there's only like one group of souls that can even use guns, so it's kind of like, just don't worry about it. But the effects is medium assault, and whoever's in the third slot will have intercept out the gate. So that means the Kamihime that's in the front, like the second slot in the front, that's the third slot basically, they will start off with 3 turns of intercept, which will pretty much just, I do believe intercept prevents you from taking damage, but also counterattacks. So, kind of interesting for some strategies, but it's not necessarily needed. But the dark bow, you could probably avoid this as well. However, keep in mind that it is based on barriers, and I don't know how strong the barriers are, but it is a 5-turn barrier, so that's actually kind of interesting. But it'll give it to the 4th Kamihime at the start of the fight. And if a soul uses it, then it will give themselves a barrier when you burst. But either way, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about it. The only thing you need to go after is the hammer, for sure. If you ask me, the gun and the bow are useless because ranged weapons, which is what gives those special slot effects to a character in a position, those are not worth. Ranged weapons are not worth. But this final break weapon, definitely worth. So go after it. Now, because this is dark, I should obviously say that light has the advantage element. However, because it's also dark, you will never get hit with weakness damage. So use whoever. If you have a strong light team, immediately go for them. If you don't, use whoever. Just know that if you're using dark, they have the worst chance of debuffing, because of the fact that same element is resistant towards each other for some weird reason. So when it comes to debuffs, you will have the hardest time using another dark team, basically. When it comes to damage, it's unchanged. Now, that said, I could suggest light characters to use for this, but that's up to you guys. If you want me to, I will do another video that has a whole bunch of light characters I can suggest for this, because I am a light main. And then I also have to mention too, I don't know if this is the point where we get Light Shiva, but if it is, go after her. She is extremely strong, especially if you can keep her HP up, because she really runs off of vigor. She even gives a vigor buff. But anyways, if this is the event where you can get Light Shiva, like when she makes her debut, get her. She is a permanent addition to the gacha, but get her. She is very, very strong. And she will greatly help with this event, because remember how I said that Solomon and Medea work pretty well because they do a lot of AoE damage? So does Light Shiva. So she'll do a lot of damage for these Labyrinth events if you happen to get her. Especially this one, since she'll be strong against these enemies. But anyways, that's all for this. Again, more of this is going to come soon because I try to do Labyrinth events. Unlike Tower, I can actually repeat this if it fails, so I should have a Labyrinth video up. But if it is a repeat, just notice that I will not get certain treasures, because once you go through the list, you'll only get bronze treasures if you go back, and they will only give you gems. So you can actually gem farm from this if you want to, but up to you. I'd still say it's better to just go through the gem quest. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this will come soon, and take care.